This is another legendary, Pras, Flame of Vengeance, and this guy's kind of the face of the set from my understanding because he's bundled into the Kickstarter. He is a 3-cost 7/5, and he's, again, like the old version of Pras, Flamed On and Veror. And he has Flame Strike 1, so if he hits a character, that character continues to burn every turn for 1 damage. And more significantly, Pras can Flame Strike the enemy fortress. So if you get through with Pras at least once, they are going to take damage every turn, which gives you some inevitability that once he's gotten through, all you have to do is wait. It might be a long time, but he can really, really put a lot of pressure on control decks by if he gets through, even if your opponent establishes a really strong control lock afterwards, they might not be able to end the game before they die to the flame strike damage. And then also, when the enemy fortress is dealt damage, if Pras is on the battlefield, increase that damage by 1. So he's adding 1 to basically all your sources of damage, which is very, very good. I think this is a great card. I'm going to be playing with it. I've been playing a Death Blast deck, and I've been using the old version of Pras, who I think is also great. You could use both. I'm tempted to switch to this version of Pras because it's more aggressive, maybe a little less utility and control offered, but this guy can push out a lot of damage, and it's not easy to stop him from doing that. I believe also if he gets through multiple times that those flame strikes add up. So if he gets through 2 or 3 times, your opponent's going to be in some deep, deep trouble. All right. Next up, Prepare for Conflict. Flamed On plus Warpath. Not a combo that we have seen too often. It happens, but this card's really cool. It's 1 cost. It's an ability. The top 2 characters in your deck get +4/+0, and it has recall for 3, so you can play this card from your graveyard for 3. My thoughts on this card is recall kind of reads as draw card. Maybe like it's draw half a card because you are drawing basically another version of Prepare for Conflict, but it's worse. So 1 cost cards that draw card tend to be really good just because they are very easy to include in the deck. This isn't quite as good. Recall 3 isn't quite as good as draw card, but it's close. And then top 2 characters in your deck getting +4/+0, if those fall on charge characters from Flamed On, this has the ability to make you very explosive in terms of the amount of damage you're pushing out. So I think that in a Flamed On Warpath deck that aims to be an aggressive deck that is putting out low-cost characters, this offers a lot. That really you want the +4/+0 to be on low-cost characters that have charge so that you can start pushing the bonus damage out into your opponent's face as early as possible. I think this is good. Not much more to say about it. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of decks people put together that take advantage of these 2 cards together because the factions are a little strange. All right, next we have Project Hellfire. It's a common, Exiles plus Flamed On, and Exiles plus Flamed On is a combo that is very strong at being an aggressive combo because you can take advantage of some of the aggro cards from both factions. But there haven't been that many cards that are exclusive to this combination of factions. So it's interesting to see Exiles and Flamed On together on a specific card. And it is a 7/1 artificial character, which for a 3 cost is a really bad stat line. But when Project Hellfire deals combat damage to a character while attacking, the XX damage is dealt to the next defender. So that's decent. It helps you get through chump blockers. But I think really the last thing on the card is the most significant. When you deploy Project Hellfire, create an exact copy of it in the assault zone. At the end of the turn, remove it. So this seems like a very aggressive card. that can push for a lot of damage, because it kind of has charge because it puts a version of itself into the assault zone, and then you get to attack with the actual Project Hellfire the following turn. I think it's pretty good. Also, the fact that it says exact copy is interesting because it means you could take advantage of cards that are buffing it prior to it coming into play. And we've got a few of those from this set so far. We've got Prepare for Conflict. And then we also have, I'm looking for it right now, Talic Accords, I think is what it was called. I reviewed that card in a previous videos. Yes, it is Talic Accords. So this is a card that carries those buffs quite effectively because you kind of get to double dip on those buffs. Very interesting. I think this card's good. Nothing more to say about it. Okay. Next, remember the giants. Create a mountain giant. It is a spirit in addition to its other types. It's cost 7. It's a Warpath card, and it's got Recall 4. I think that at the 7 cost, it's a bit much because Mountain Giant is not really a fantastic card, but Recall 4 is nice. If you can get this into your graveyard and just pay the 4, that's a pretty significant discount there and could be worth it. Some other thoughts on this card are, one, Rift Run. We've brought this up a few times, the draft format. This seems amazing for draft. And then another thought is that this is a ability card that lets you put out a dude, which I don't know if there's really, I'm trying to think of how you take advantage of this, but you could have a deck that runs very few actual characters to better manipulate something like Evilly. I'm not sure what you're trying to tutor out with Evilly, but I think this card has potential, and I think especially in draft, we're going to see something very awesome with this card in terms of just the amount of value it generates in draft, but it feels a little slow for the regular constructed play. All right, next. This is one of my favorite cards that they've revealed. Saber-Tooth Snail. It's a double Warpath, 2-cost Snail, that's a new character type. We've got a few new character types. I'm not sure why this wouldn't be a beast, or I'm gonna say it. It'd be really cool if this was an insectoid. I know that snails are not insects, but we have a bug deck that cares about bugs. We don't have anything that cares about snails, and insectoids could use some love. But it's all beside the point. The real point here is that it is a 2-cost 15/8, which is one of the most disgusting stat lines for this cost of a character. It's just so big for its cost. It's got Unstoppable too, so it can push for damage through chump blockers. However, when it enters the deployed area, it becomes exhausted for 2 turns. So it's slow. It can't turn online until you wait. I love this card because it feels very Warpath, but lets Warpath do something that it hasn't been able to before, which is that Warpath has always been about getting out these giant characters, but usually the way they get out giant characters requires a lot of setup with ramping and a lot of waiting. This does involve waiting, but it lets you utilize your early resources differently than how you currently do. That playing the turn 2 brings life by passing has been kind of the move for Warpath for a really long time. And it's refreshing to see on turn 2 the ability to just put down a gigantic snail that around turn 4 is going to start really hammering in for damage. And final thought on this card real quick is that you can potentially get them out with Evilly. Evilly is a card that is notorious for abusing these low-cost characters that you can potentially turn a 1-drop into a Saber-Tooth Snail, which is pretty neat. I really love this card. It's also common, which I feel like this is better than a common. Not that rarity correlates to power level because we have a lot of really powerful commons, but this card reads to me as something really crazy. All right. We're moving on here. Okay, so next, Vesta, Firebrand Commander. It's an epic, it's a 5 cost, it's a Flame Dawn card, it's a unique character. It is a 6/10, which for a 5 cost card is quite poor, but it has a multi-strike too, so it's going to attack twice, and when Vesta Firebrand Commander attacks, all characters in your deck and hand permanently get +1/+0. And because it's got multi-strike, she's attacking twice. So the first time she gets to attack, your deck gets this +2/+0 bonus across the board. I think this card's really cool. I think it has a lot of potential too. You could play it in the command zone, and even if it doesn't really get to attack more than once, if it does get to attack once, I feel like the +2/+0 to your whole deck is already pretty good value. And if it gets to attack twice, now we're really talking, because your Paladins of the Flame Dawn are going to be 2 cost 10/6s. I think is great. It's also 1 purity in Flame Dawn, so you might be able to really take advantage of it in some other faction combinations. I'm really only thinking about Flame Dawn right now because I'm a tiny peanut brain player, but there's a whole lot you can do with this, and I think it's very cool. Okay, moving on. Another card that I think is really cool. I don't know how good he is, but he's one of the funniest cards they've shown so far, and that's Filthy Larry. He's a rare. He's a neutral card or factionless card, so you can play him in any deck. He's a unique character. He's an 18/10, which for a 7 cost is kind of like, it's not great. But when you deploy Filthy Larry, he creates 6 called shots. And for those of you who used to play Infinity Wars back when Draft was around, called shot was kind of a significant card in Draft because it is removal that any faction can get access to, and not all factions really have the same removal suite that like Cult of Veror does. This sets their cost to 1 though, and then you put 1 of them in your hand and shuffle the rest in your deck. So you get 6 bullets in his 6-shooter, and you start with 1 of them in your hand, and they cost 1. And a called shot that costs 1 is really is a whole lot better than a called shot that costs 5. Because 5 cost called shot is really mediocre. It's just good enough for Draft, but you won't see it really in a normal constructed game. But a called shot for 1, I think debatably is better removal than like Death Ray. Maybe even objectively better. You have to be a very skilled player to be able to pinpoint where your opponent's going to put the characters, but at the cost of it being just 1 to play, even if you miss, it doesn't feel like you've really lost too much. But I'm going to share so I've said all the good things about the card, which I think he's hilarious. I think he's so cool. I'm really happy to see Called Shot getting some love in some way, but I wish the character was either a little more powerful or lower cost, because it's very hard to justify playing this in a more competitive setting. So I'm going to share with you 2 thoughts. One is, I think if he's like, maybe they made him like a 10/10 and made him cost 4 or something, that would be cool. I would be more excited about the card. Or I'm going to share with you this is a dream of mine of what he could have been. He could have said he puts only 1 called shot into your hand that costs 1. Forget the other ones. And it could be every time you kill a character with called shot, he makes a called shot in your hand. So you reward players who are correctly making the called shot. That would be kind of cool. You might be able to actually like build a commander or build him in the command zone. But right now I think he's more hilarious than he is effective. Okay. That's enough about Filthy Larry. Really love the card either way. Okay. We only have a couple left. Jade Brute. It is a rare. It is for Descends to the Dragons plus Veror, which is a really strong control combination for factions. It's an 8/8, which is abysmal for a 6-cost character. But let's talk about the effect. At the end of the turn, if an opponent lost 8 or more morale this turn, Jade Brute gets +2/+2, and it gains barrier 1 until the end of next turn. And Jade Brute deals morale damage instead of fortress damage. So I think really the morale damage instead of fortress damage is what makes this card special. That we don't have that effect on many cards. We have it on really only a couple. And one of them is triple Descendants of the Dragons, and that's Avatar of Lingbao. So it's been really restricted in terms of what decks you could play it in. And the other is it's like Spectral Serpent or something. I'm not remembering the name, but it's not great. And I think unfortunately this card may suffer from some of the same problems that the Spectral Serpent does, in terms of its cost is very high for the amount of morale damage that it actually pressures. Like if we compare it to, I'm trying to remember the name of the card. I'll just put it up on the screen. He's the 4-cost 10/12 that makes your opponent lose 4 morale every turn he's on the battlefield. Pushing for 5 morale every turn, even if you don't connect with the enemy fortress, feels a little more reliable and strong than pushing for, in the case of Jade Brute, it could be like 10 morale if he gets that +2/+2. The last thing I will say about the card, though, is that the barrier is relevant because barrier on Jade Brute will protect it from your own board wipes. So if you want to play Mass Death on a turn where you have Jade Brute out, you could potentially have Jade Brute get through for damage automatically in that sense. But this is not really one of my favorites. Just going to be honest. All right, last card. And this is a 1-cost common for Exiles called Broken Discipline. It's 4-cost. I may have already said that. I've talked about too many cards. My brain's getting fogged up. It's an ability. You choose Assault, Defense, or Support Zone, and your opponent sacrifices a random character in that zone. Very simple effect. I think it's also good. I think it's also quite good. It might struggle against decks that run more of a swarm, but the neat thing is that with something like Spontaneous Combustion, you can deal with those decks that run lots of low-cost, low-health characters, and with Broken Discipline, you can deal with characters that are higher cost and are a little more tricky to kill. And this is a nice addition to Exiles that helps round out their ability to play control deck with quite a bit of removal. Okay. That was a lot. I don't know how long this video is. It might end up getting split up. We'll see. But hopefully you all enjoyed this. And I will be making another video sometime in the near future with some exclusive spoilers that I have been given that I haven't gotten to yet. And again, Kickstarter link in the description. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to. And either way, I hope to see you in game. Until next time, take it easy.